Sorry. Look, welcome, and my name is Christine Zayako-Kanesh, and I'm your chair for this webinar. Repellent soils are a key constraint in Western Australia, and clay spreading and strategic tillage are options for management in Western Australia. So, how cost-effective are the combinations of these strategies? It's my pleasure to introduce Giacomo Betti, my colleague and the leader of this research, which was presented at the Agronomy Conference in 2017. Giacomo will be discussing the trial which was established in 2016 and the 2 years of results so far. Welcome, Giacomo.
So thank you very much, Christine, for the introduction. So let's go straight to the presentation. So today we will be discussing about cost effectiveness, a combination of clay spreading and tillage for the management of repellent soils. So initially, my talk was about the first year results, as I presented at the Agronomy Conference this year. But since the presentation, the time that I'm allocated is longer, and I just got the results from this year, I've decided to upgrade this presentation with the second year also results. So let's go through the presentation. So a bit of a context. As we know, the practice of clay spreading has been in Australia for a while with good results, and we know that clay spreading is one of the most effective ways to fix water repellent soils. However, we have good results and bad results with this, especially because most of the times the approach are quite anecdotal, and because of the costs are quite high, is better to being able to understand why sometimes it doesn't work and where it works better. So saying that, the research aims were simply basically find the most cost-effective combination method of tillage and clay spreading for the management of water repellent soils. Question that we are trying to answer are in particular, is claying still a viable option? Sometimes might be not, especially because we have more options now, more tillage options and agronomic options. So claying might not be anymore a viable option, a cost-effective option. And when it is, how much clay is enough, and when is too much? This is because our hypotheses are that, especially in low rates or in a medium, to low rainfall areas, perhaps low rates of clay might work better than high rate of clay. And another question, we require a few years of trial, is that if clay combined with tillage can actually increase the longevity of the effect of the treatment. So we established a few trials that try to answer this question. Today we'll talk only about one in particular. The other trials are in the northern part of the wheat belt, so Badgingarra and Moura, and we also have another trial in Esperance where we're looking at clay delving as an alternative way of claying the soil. So with regards specifically to clay spreading, the three trials that we have in Moura and Badgingarra are the one presented, you see here, and they're very similar in their design, and the reason why they're very similar is because we are trying to look at a combination of claying and tillage over different soils, and having a similar design allow us to compare the results over different season and soils. So today we're talking about one of these trials, which is in Moura, part of the farm is called Yanda, belongs to Lawson Grains. The trial was established in 2016, and these are a few pics from the trial. And also we have prepared a video that is now available on the GRDC YouTube channel, and if you want to have a look, the video is the GCTV 19, and you can have a look on this to have more information about the trial establishment. With regards to the clay that has been used for the claying in this trial, it was sourced not far from the trial site, about 2 kilometers away. However, we know that when it comes to cost effectiveness, clay shouldn't be sourced should be sourced within a kilometer away from the paddock. Otherwise, it becomes too expensive. In the table, you can see the analysis of the clay that we have used. I just want to focus on two numbers in particular. One is the clay content, which in this case, the subsoil was had about 30% of clay, which was a good amount of clay. We don't want to have less than 25, probably, because otherwise the cost of application doesn't justify the amount of clay we're actually adding. The second number that you can see on the left, this one is the cation exchange capacity, which is quite low for a clay, to be honest, because we were expecting something between 15 to 20 at least. But this is not uncommon on the clay in this area. It's something that had to be taken into account. What it means basically is that we have a clay that physically is good, but won't add much in terms of fertility to the soil. So let's go to a trial design. This is an aerial image that we took with our drone, and we can see the trial from above. You can also see on Google Earth if you want. It's made of 3 replicas, and the way we established the trial was we had 4 different application rates of clay: 0, 100, 150, and 250 tons an hectare. They were based on local experience information. So we decided that based on the typical application rate 150, we wanted to have a lower rate of 100 and a much higher on 250. The clay rate application were combined with tillage, 3 different approaches, or actually 4 if you consider the no incorporation, and there were tillage was performed perpendicularly to the clay application. So we had a very light approach of incorporation with the offset disc. Then we have a more aggressive one using spaded, and then we introduced a further one, which was basically spading going half of the normal speed, 2.5 kilometers an hour. The reason of that was to theoretically increase the degree of mixing of clay in the soil. In terms of cost, we estimated those are the estimate of the cost of the treatments, and as you can see, they are not particularly cheap, especially when it comes to clay spreading, and thus is important to have the best result when you invest so much money. With regards to the crop, in 2016 we have Latrobe barley, and this year we have Barlock European. First thing we had a look was the effect of the treatments on the water repellents, and these are the results from last year. And it's quite clear that 2 things: increasing clay decreases significantly the water repellents. So the lower the MED value, the lower is the water repellents. And tillage did also a good job in decreasing the water repellents. But what was clear is that spading, either normal speed or half speed, was the most effective, regardless of the clay content, and to the point that it completely remove water repellents. In fact, you won't see the bars of spader and spaded at half speed. What surprises us, however, is that the response of the crop establishment was actually didn't reflected what we saw in terms of water repellents. So we had early plant counts on June 1st and NDVI on June 29, 2016. As you can see, the establishment was, there's not much difference between control and the other treatments. In fact, when we look at the NDVI taken on the 29th of June, we could see the tillage, particularly spading, actually had a negative effect on plant establishment, and we believe that was due to seeding that problem on newly renovated soils. However, when we go to the yield, the response was very positive to the treatments, and the results told us that the highest yield was obtained with the combination of 250 tons an hectare of clay and spading. However, what we saw also was that spading was giving the best results regardless of the clay. In fact, tillage was significantly correlated to the yield, more than clay itself. Now, if you observe the numbers, the actual yields were quite low, particularly given that last year was a quite wet season, and in the area we had much better results. This was due probably to a frost event. In fact, in November 2016, the local farmer advised us of a frost that occurred at the beginning of November. And what we did, we took the opportunity to sample before the harvest and do some frost analysis. So we estimate the frost-induced sterility on the barley heads. And what we found out was that there was significant effect of both clay and tillage on reducing the damages of frost. That was very, very evident, and you can see on the control up to 60 or more % of the floors were sterile due to frost, and spading was able to reduce this damage to below 40%. And again, this was regardless the amount of clay was added. So clay was effective in reducing frost in the offset disc and control, not tillage, but spading was reduced frost regardless of the clay content. We moved to the 2017 results, which involved lupin. So we repeat earliest plant establishment, which for us is a very good indicator for the effect of water repellents on the establishment of the crop. This year the results were very different because, for obvious reason, the seeding problem. We didn't experience seeding problem because second season, and in fact, in this case, the reduction in water repellents due to the addition of clay and tillage were reflected in the establishment. And you can see from the table, spading and clay were really effective in improving the establishment of the crop. Very interesting the fact that establishment, as you can see, reflected really well the yield of 2016. And you can see from the aerial we have from our drone on this year, lupin establishment. It was taken on 30 August, and there is a clear difference in establishment where we have this spader treatment, and the establishment was much better in comparison to the other treatments. So when it comes to yield, we just got this yield last week, and they continue the story with last year. So consistent with last year, spader was the best treatment that gave the best result in terms of yield. And again, we didn't see an effect of clay, so spader was able to produce significantly better yields regardless of the clay added to the soil. Although the 100 tons an hectare of clay rate was the one that gave technically the best result. Before going to this one, again, the yield in general were quite low, and the answer probably, the reason for that is the same of last year. So we experienced frost. This year we had the chance to put tiny tags and actually measure the temperature. And what we found was that between August and November we have several nights below zero, and probably those days affect the yield. We still have to have the results from the actual plant cuts and see the harvest index, but we believe that the reason why the yield are quite low is because due to frost event. So finally, what we get to the cost effectiveness, to the reason why we're doing this trial, and we did a bit of economy on this trial over the 2 years, and we calculate the return of investment. So we we basically estimate the gross profit minus the cost involved on the treatments and the cost involved for the crop growth, for the direct growing cost for barley in 2016 and lupin in 2015, considering that the cost for the treatment were at an amortization over 10 years with a 6% of interest. So, first of all, over 2 years, we repeated the worst performing treatment was the control. It was good, and the best one was with Spader at 100 or 250 tons an hectare. However, when it comes to cost, because the cost involved with claying were very high, the return of investment, the best return on investment were obtained with the Spader, as expected, in both 2016 and 2017. Even though the Spader with 100 tons an hectare or 250 gave good results in 2016, but in 2017, because the season was quite dry and the frost, actually the cost of treatment influenced a lot the return on investment, and only the spaded treatment at 0 tons an hectare, 100 tons an hectare gave the positive ROI. In fact, what we can see from this table is that even doing nothing on this trial was not a good option, because gave a very negative return on investment. So there was the need of a treatment. And if you look at the average return on investment over 2 years, which is here, we see that the only one that gave a positive return of investment was the treatment with spading at 0 tons an hectare of clay or 100 tons an hectare of clay, the top one. So we have a take-home message here. We can see over, just looking at this trial, that spading showed to be the most cost-effective treatment on water-repellent deep yellow sand. Claying was observed to help plant establishment, but doesn't increase significantly the yield, in particular the high rates in dry season. We think that this might be due also on the quality of the clay, which, as we've seen at the beginning, was poor, with low CEC, and also might be due to the fact that the trial is established on yellow sand, which might be less responsive to clay due to the fact that they are more fertile compared to a gutless white sand. And that's the reason why it's important to compare this trial with the results from the other trials on deep white sand that we have in Bachingara. One thing that really was surprising was the effect of spading on reducing frost damage. We have evidence in the past of the positive effect of claying on reducing frost damage, but that was the first time we saw also spading with no clay reducing frost damage. One important thing that this trial will try to look at is the long-term effect of claying. This is because what we expect, or our hypothesis, is that spading or tillage by itself will eventually decrease its effect in the long term, and we hope to see a positive effect of claying in increasing in the longevity of the treatment's effect in the future. So hopefully we will have at least another 1-2 years results, and we could better quantify the cost effectiveness of the tillage. And with that, I close here and I'll leave the question. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Giacomo. And that was I know that there's a lot of work that goes into this research. And so firstly, just to remind people that just to type questions in that you might have from the presentation. But I have got a couple of questions here, Giacomo. Did you measure the change in water repellents down the profile or on the top surface with those different methods of tillage and claying?
We haven't measured. Let's say we did some measurement, but we have to take more detailed measurement. For the moment, the only details are on the surface. But what we've done, we have this year we actually look at root growth, and we saw a very significant difference in root growth, especially at depth, between the treatments.
Thanks, Giacomo. That's excellent. Just having a look at a couple of other questions here. How much of the response was due to, say, changes in nutrient availability, or this is yield responses, versus water availability and tillage? So just repeat.
This is a complex question. Looking at the tissue test results of last year, we still have to look at properly this year. It doesn't look like there is much difference, and I believe that given the poor quality of the clay, there won't be much different. There won't be much the effect of nutrient effect, let's say, because of this reasoning. I believe that the access to water is the key. With this year we also have a moisture measurement. We have a diviner probe, so we still have to run all the data for the season, but the first results seem that there is a difference in water availability between the treatments, and that could be one of the keys. The other thing is that the establishment definitely has a positive effect on the final year, especially this year where we had a dry start and the water repellence was really expressed. The treatments where water repellence was mitigated at a better establishment, and that was reflected definitely in the yield.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Giacomo. Okay, look, we'll draw to a close the webinar for today. Look, thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. This research has been conducted through a partnership with the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development and the Grains Research and Development Corporation. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Bye.